Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video, and happy new year. I'm hoping that you all have a very safe, healthy, and wonderful 2023. To start 2023, I am finishing up the videos that I have been filming about books from 2022, and last but not least is the best books I read in 2022. I wanted to save this for last because one, it took me forever to put this list together. I know, but like, I can't make decisions, okay? I'm very, very bad at making decisions. And I wanted to make this a small list. I didn't want to have like 30 plus books on it. I wanted to be, you know, concise and serious about this list. So it took me quite a bit of time to figure out what books I wanted to put on this list, and finally, I have a list that I'm pretty happy with. I think these are the best books I read in 2022 and the ones that I think stuck out the most to me and that just made me so happy to read. So I have 10 books and 2 volumes of manga. I didn't want to include the manga in the 10 books just because, I don't know, it felt like they should have their own little category. So I have 2 manga volumes and then 10 books. We're gonna start with the manga first because that way if you aren't interested or you don't care, you can just skip ahead a little bit and move on to the books portion. But we are going to start with manga. The first manga that I have to show you is Death Note. Are you surprised? I feel like you shouldn't be because I talked a lot about this manga, and I went into this manga knowing I already loved the anime so much. I'm a big fan of Death Note, the anime, and so I really wanted to read the manga and compare them and see if I liked one versus the other, or I don't know. I was just really wanting to read Death Note this year, and I'm so happy that I did. I love it so much. It was a 5-star read. Every single volume was 5 stars, even though technically I rate based off of series for manga. I don't really rate individual volumes just because it gets a little too complicated for me. So I rate based off of series, but the entire series is a 5-star read for me, and I love everything about this series. I love the cat and mouse aspect of the story. I love the characters. I love the ending. I seriously love the ending. If you have seen the anime and you felt similar to me where the ending was like good, but it wasn't quite as punchy as you wanted it to be, I highly recommend reading the manga because the manga ending is far superior in my mind, and I was so giddy over the ending to this manga. I was just so excited. But I seriously love this. It's a great psychological horror with a lot of thriller aspects and a lot of like twists and turns. It's a very cat and mouse type of story, and I just love thinking about this manga. I love analyzing it in my head, which is very weird for me because we know I don't like to analyze things. We know I don't like to think too deep, too hard. I don't like to overanalyze things that I read, but for this series, I swear I could just talk and talk and talk about it. I could talk about things I love and why I think so many things are so brilliantly done about this manga. I could just go on and on about this manga. It's very weird, but it had to be in my top because it was just as satisfying and as wonderful as I had hoped it would be. I already knew that the anime was one of my favorite animes of all time, but now I can confidently say that the manga is also one of my favorite manga series of all time. The other manga is actually also a series that I watched in anime form first and fell in love with, and then decided to read the series because I was so obsessed with the anime, and that is Erased. This series, I don't even have words for it honestly, because this series is just perfect in my mind. I know those are big words coming from readers, like a perfect story, but for me Erased is seriously just so perfect. It's a sci-fi thriller mystery, and I know, sci-fi. Erin reading a sci-fi? What? That's so weird. I mean, it's not like super sci-fi, it just deals with time travel, and that's why I liked it, because it's not like extremely heavy on the sci-fi. It's just more like a time traveling aspect to the story. But there's just so much more to this story. It's about grief, it's about friendship, it's about family, it's about becoming the person that you want to be. It's about standing up for what you think is right and just making tough choices. It's about growing up. There's just so many things in this story and it is so emotional. I mean, I cried during the anime. I 1000% cried in every volume of this manga series. I was a little ball of crying, sobbing mess. It's such a beautiful story. It's just so beautiful and my heart breaks every volume, but there's also just this like underlying aspect of hope to it. So it breaks your heart and then it gives you hope, and it's just like this cycle you go through while you read it, and it's just so brilliantly done, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this. Even if you don't read manga, I think it's a brilliant series. If you want to check out the anime, it's just as good. It's very close. They're very similar. The ending, like in Death Note, is different, but I prefer the ending in the manga, so I mean, I like both endings, but I do think the manga ending is superior. But there's just so many beautiful things about this manga. I know, I love it. I love it so much. It made a lasting impression on me, the anime and the manga, and I'll just never be able to forget it, and I just have such a soft spot for this series, and I just love it. I just love it. Next up are all the books that I loved from 2022. The first one we're starting with is one that I haven't shut up about, and honestly, you're probably going to think that about every book I mention, but this one specifically I literally just included in another video, and that is Shiver by Ali Reynolds. Look, I know this book is not for everyone. I understand. I know the reasonings why people did not like this book. I completely understand. I think they are very valid reasons. For some reason, this book just did everything right for me. It was just everything I wanted in a snowy, isolated thriller. Yes, they talk a lot about snowboarding. No, I don't know anything about snowboarding. I don't know anything about sports in general. I hate sports. You think I would hate this because snowboarding is such a huge aspect of it. But I'm telling you, it reads like a drama, like this dramatic, athletic competition thing. It's so drama. It felt like I was watching a TV show. I know I keep talking about it. It reminded me of Make It or Break It, which is a gymnastics TV show that used to be on air, and it reminded me of that because every time we had a flashback to the snowboarding competitions, all I could do was go, oh my god, the drama. What? And I just was so sucked in. No, I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't get it, but I just pretended like I knew what they were saying. I was like, ah, yes, that snowboarding terminology. I know that. But for some reason, the twists, the characters, the setting, everything worked so well for me, and I didn't guess the twist. I thought the twist was actually really well done. I know a lot of times in thrillers, they can get a little bit weird, like that's super unrealistic or that's a little bit too wild. And I'm not gonna say this is like the most realistic thing in the entire universe. Okay, it's a little bit, it's a little bit. Thrillers, you know how it is. I thought the twist was extremely well done, and it floored me, it surprised me, it shocked me. I didn't see it coming, and at the end I was like, wow, that's a perfect thriller. This is a perfect thriller. Easy 5 stars. Easy 5 stars. I know it's gonna not be for everyone, but it was 100% for me. Next up is one of my favorite haunted house stories of all time now. I'm telling you right now, I think it's perfect. I think it blew me away, okay? It's just a perfect book, and that is The Good House by Tananarive Due. I know so many people rave about Tananarive Due's writing, and I kept thinking, yes, I know, I have The Good House on my shelves. It's big, it's chunky, it scares me. I made a promise to myself that 2022 was going to be the year that I read this book because I kept putting it off based off the size. And I was like, Erin, get a grip, okay? Read it. Everyone raves about it. Everyone loves it. You're probably gonna love it. Just suck it up. Read a big book, okay? So I did. I read it and I love this story. I know a lot of people don't like the ending, but it is a perfect ending in my opinion. This is what I mean by a perfect ending. When I read it, I was like, yes. So satisfying, so perfect. It made the story a million times better than I could have even imagined it being. Like, I was like, there's no way this book can get any better. And then I read the end and I was like, I'm wrong. It got better. It got better. It's just such a beautiful, heartbreaking, grief-laced story. Like, I'm telling you, there's so much grief. It's just like a lump in your throat while you're reading it, but the story is just so well done and the writing is so beautiful. It's so dark and it's just sad. It's just very melancholy. It works so well with everything else that's going on, and I did not see any of it coming. When everything came together, I was like, this is a perfect book. I could never have made a better book. Like, in my mind, if I had just sat down and wrote a perfect book, in my opinion, this is what a perfect haunted house story would look like. And I am obsessed with Tanana Reevdoo's writing. I have more to read from her and I'm just so excited to be able to do that in 2023. My next favorite is A Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. It's no secret that I love Jennifer Hillier. I think she is amazingly talented. She's definitely one of my favorite authors. She's someone that I will buy automatically from. As soon as I see that she's going to release a new book, you bet your butt I'm going to be buying it because I just really love her writing. I think she writes really interesting thrillers because a lot of the time thrillers don't tend to go too dark. I mean, they touch a line, you know, they never cross that line though. They get close to the line, but they never cross it, right? They kind of just touch on dark things, but they don't fully go there a lot of the time. But I feel like with Jennifer Hillier's thrillers, she tends to cross that line, and I love that because I like really dark stories. I love horror. I love that dark kind of story. And so for me, a lot of thrillers are a little too, they never get to the area I want them to be. But Jennifer Hillier tends to push, and I like that. And this one is definitely a very dark thriller. I feel like her stories are very immersive and the writing always just like lures me in. I feel like I get so sucked in that by the time I've noticed I've been reading for hours and hours, I'm done with the book. Like, I just sit down, I'm zeroed in, and then I finish the book because they're just so captivating. And this one is a very, very dark. I know a lot of people probably won't think so, but in terms of thrillers, this is a very dark thriller. There's a lot of like content warnings that go along with this one, and the twist in this one just had me floored. I was like, are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Because I feel like I should have seen it coming, and I'm sure people did see it coming and people were like, why didn't you get it? I just get so sucked in. I'm not even paying attention. I'm not even trying to solve the story because I'm just so enamored with the story reading that I'm just present in the story. And I love that about her books. I love that about her writing. And this one, look, it might be my favorite, okay? It might be my favorite. I can't tell, all right? I can't tell yet. I can't tell. But it is one of the best thrillers I read this year, and I just think Jennifer Hillier knows how to write a really good thriller. Speaking of favorite authors, next up we have The Ravenous Dead by Darcy Coates. Now, this one was a surprise to me. I really didn't think that I was going to love this book as much as I did because the first book in the series, The Whispering Dead, I enjoyed. I liked it. It was definitely the first book in a series where it's trying to set up the scene and get you kind of like accustomed to what's gonna happen and the characters. It's very much just an intro, right? And so for me, I felt like it was a solid book, but I wasn't sure how invested I was in the series. It wasn't like the Black Winter series, where I started Voices in the Snow and I was hooked. I was done. I knew I was obsessed with the series. This series, the Gravekeeper series, wasn't necessarily like that for me. And so I was a little nervous going into this one because I was like, ooh, is it gonna be as good as The Whispering Dead? Is it gonna be worse than The Whispering Dead? I wasn't really sure, but I think this book is far superior to the first one. I loved this one. You really get to know the characters more. You get more of them. You get a little bit more information about what's happening in this series, where things are going, maybe what's coming up next. I mean, just a little hint, you know. I still feel very confused by this series. I have not figured it out at all. I don't know what I'm getting into still, but I'm very much more invested, and I feel like the characters have come alive a bit more, and I feel more, you know, interested in them and wanting to know more about them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in the next book. And so I feel like this was a really, really good turning point for the Gravekeeper series, and I just cannot wait to see what happens next. I feel like this next book is not going to be a surprise because I kind of let the secret spill that I was going to include this book in this video, but I just love it so much, and I feel like you all know that I'm kind of obsessed with this book, and that is I Remember You by Ursa Sigurdardóttir. Was that better? Maybe? I think we all know that I love an isolated, snowy setting. We know that. We know I love it in my horror and my thrillers, and this book is no exception, because this has two point of views, and in one point of view you're on this isolated place where there's a bunch of snow and people are trying to fix up this house, and then another POV you have kind of like this mystery trying to be solved, and the two point of views definitely meet. They definitely intersect, but that point of intersection is, it's just so hard to pinpoint. At least for me, I could not figure it out. I kept trying to figure out how were they connected? How do these two stories become one? And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. I kept thinking, and I was coming up with theories, and I was trying to, it was basically like that meme where the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is like looking at the board with all the string and stuff, and he's like, ah! That was me trying to figure out what was going on in this book and I was trying to predict it, okay? I was trying. Look, I'm gonna be honest, I was trying to figure it out, which, you know, I usually hate when I can predict things, but I was trying really hard, and I could not solve it, and it was driving me insane, but it was also making me read a lot faster because I was just like, how does this work? What is going on? The setting, the atmosphere is just so beautiful, and this is a ghost story, which I love because I love ghost stories, but there's so much more happening besides this element of the ghost aspect. It's just so interesting to see how this story turns out, and it's definitely creepy. It's definitely just like very spooky, but like, I don't know, the writing is just beautiful. I have to check out more from this author because I'm obsessed. I think this is just an amazing, amazing story. A lot of you told me that there's a movie, which I will be watching because I'm obsessed, obviously, so of course I have to watch the movie, but I'll never stop thinking about this book. It was just so good. This next one is one that really shocked me. I didn't think I was going to love it as much as I did, and that is A Nest of Nightmares by Lisa Tuttle. This is a short story collection of 13 stories, and they all deal with women protagonists, and they all have very everyday, ordinary, average topics at the root of them, at the heart of them, and then it becomes eerie, and it becomes very like, just very spooky, but in a very soft way, if that makes sense. I know that's a very weird way to describe it. You wouldn't expect them to be eerie or chilling, right? But this author, Lisa Tuttle, really takes these ordinary, everyday, average things and makes them strange, bizarre, and very eerie. And I loved that. I think these stories were very, very well done. It's very rare that I love every single story in a short story collection, and I did. I think there was one story that I wasn't like the biggest fan of, but I still enjoyed it. It was one story out of 13. That's insane for a short story collection. Most of the time, it's very hit or miss. It's very 50% you like, you know what I mean? Like, it's never all of them, because short story collections are just like that. It's just hard to love every story sometimes because they're all so different, but these feel very similar in a way. You can tell that the author has a very specific way of storytelling and just a very specific voice, I guess, and I really enjoyed them, and I think every story really just worked for me personally, and it was just very enjoyable. Like, I just loved every second of this book, and it's something I always think about. I always think about this short story collection, and this cover, again, the cover really sticks out because there's this, you know, the baby birds on it. So it's a very, I almost want to say ugly, but beautifully ugly cover. Like, it's creepy and like disturbing, but in the most beautiful way, and that's kind of how the stories are. So I feel like this cover is almost the best representation visually of what the inside is like written, if that makes sense. I know, very bizarre, but that's the best way I can explain it, because again, it's very hard to explain these stories. I just had such a great time reading them, and I really connected to the writing a lot. Next up is actually another short story collection, I know, but these two really deserve to be on my top favorite list because they were just the epitome of what a great short story collection looks like, and this one is Goth by Otsuichi. This one is actually very different from A Nest of Nightmares. They're all very different short stories and not connected. This is actually a short story collection that are connected. So this short story collection follows two classmates who are investigating murders, and they kind of get roped into the middle of a lot of things. And so each story is different, but the two main characters are still involved in each story, and by the end it kind of comes full circle to make you understand what's really happening in this collection. I love that these are connected. I think it really helps when you're reading it, because I think sometimes when you're reading a short story collection, it can be very jarring going from one story to the next and them be very different. You kind of have to switch your brain, I think, sometimes, and it can be difficult. But for this, obviously, the writing stays very much the same because it is just one author, but also the characters, the two main characters, are staying the same as well. So I think that helps out a lot. I will mention that this is a very, very brutal and graphic short story collection. So definitely look up content warnings, trigger warnings if you are looking into this, because it is a lot darker than I anticipated. I feel like I shouldn't have been as surprised as I was, but immediately, the first story, I was like, oh, I did not know we were gonna be this dark and intense right off the bat. And I personally really like that because, again, I like really dark stories, but wow, I thought this was a brilliant, brilliant collection, and I was just mesmerized while reading, and when everything came together in the end, I just knew that it was going to be a 5-star read. I knew it was just absolutely perfect in every way for me. I wish I could read it for the first time again. I feel like I wish I could reread all of these for the first time again, just because they were all so amazing that I would love to have that experience again. But this one in particular, I really feel like for this one I would love to experience it again for the first time, just because it was such an intense experience, and I loved every second of it. This next book is by an author who already showed up in this list once, and I feel like none of you are going to be surprised. This is my list after all. I feel like this isn't shocking information, but next up is Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. Look, Darcy is one of my favorite authors, okay? It just makes sense that 2 of her new releases were some of my all-time favorites. I know last year was actually the same as well. I'm pretty sure in my 2021 favorites I had 2 Darcy coats as well. So, you know, I'm just kind of keeping this as a tradition. Obviously, 2 Darcys per each reading year, I guess, apparently. But I think a lot of people loved Gallows Hill. I think this was kind of a different experience for a lot of Darcy Coates fans, because while I didn't find it to be better than her other books, it definitely is a lot more dark and it definitely is a lot more disturbing. I feel like she did kind of push boundaries a little bit in this book, and while it is a very Darcy haunted house story, it is a little bit different than her typical haunted house stories. Like I said in my wrap up, there is a spider scene that traumatized me. I can't do spiders. Even in books, it scares me. So that one made a lasting impression on me just for the obvious reasons of having a spider. But I think what else is very interesting about this one is the ending. I think most of Darcy fans know how her endings kind of play out. They're not too shocking most of the time. I feel like she follows her formula and we all know and love it, obviously. But this ending, look, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, okay, Darcy, wow, you went there. You're really gonna go for it. I was very impressed because I just didn't expect it. And so this ending really was wild for me. It was very shocking. I loved it. I'm not gonna lie, it was absolutely wonderful of an ending. But I think we were all just kind of like, whoa! Darcy really did that, and it was a great time. I always have a good time reading a Darcy Coates book, but I think this one and The Ravenous Dead were the standouts from this year for me personally, and also the only other one that they were competing with was From Below, but From Below was good, but not my new favorite, so. Okay, we're almost done with this list. This is the second to last book, and this one is The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. I had such an emotional experience while reading this book, which sounds so lame and kind of weird and just a little strange, I know. But this is a thriller book that has a true crime aspect to it. I have a very odd relationship with true crime because I've always been someone that was deeply fascinated by true crime, and I used to consume a lot of true crime, and it really affected me with my anxiety, but also I just became very selective of how I want to consume true crime because I just feel very weird sometimes, and I feel like a lot of true crime very much focuses on the perpetrators and not the victims, and that just doesn't sit very well with me a lot of times. A good way for me to have true crime in my life is in fiction, because I still get that little bit of true crime, but it just doesn't leave me with those feelings afterwards like it does when I read or watch or listen to true crime. So I definitely prefer to stay in the fictional true crime world. A lot of this book just really resonated with me because a lot of the discussion in this book and a lot of the things being said and the points being made are things that I feel really deeply about in true crime. And so for me, it was just kind of like a really emotional experience just reading it and seeing it written how I feel, and I just think it was really well done and really well written, and I think the message was just really beautiful, and I definitely can see why some people wouldn't enjoy this, but for me it just really worked, and I was just an emotional mess. I was just crying the whole time. I was just a blubbering baby while reading it. I do think the ending is a little bit easily predicted, but for me, I think the ending was exactly what I wanted it to be, and if it had been anything else, I think I would have been really sad and I probably would have cried even more. Because I did cry, the ending was just, it was a lot for me, and so I think that I prefer it to be predictable, because if it hadn't been, I think I would have just been really upset. So for me, this was just a perfect read, and I just really enjoyed it, and I thought it was just beautiful. Last but certainly not least is Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. I'm hoping this is going to be kind of a yearly thing, you know, kind of similar to Two Darcys in my top books of every year. Maybe I'll get to have a Rachel Harrison in my favorites of every year, because last year was Cackle and this year it's going to be Such Sharp Teeth. So I'm hoping this is going to become a tradition as well. I love Rachel Harrison's writing. I think that her writing is just so easy to read, and her stories really just suck me in, and I just really enjoy the stories that she tells, and I really enjoy her characters. I think I relate to them, you know, and that might be why I like her characters so much. But this is a werewolf story, and I didn't think I liked werewolf stories, but I read 2 werewolf books this year that I actually really enjoyed, so maybe that's just a 2023 thing. Maybe Erin needs to read more werewolf horror. I don't know, but I really liked this. It had romance in it. It had really great werewolf transformation scenes. It was a little bit gross and gruesome and detailed. There was like some things going on in here, and I was like, okay, Rachel Harrison, thank you for scarring me. Actually, thank you, because it was amazing. But, you know, it was like, oh, whoa, I did not know we were going there, and I was very happy to see it, because again, Cackle was a little bit more lighthearted and just kind of like a little bit more sweet, whereas this one I felt like kind of kept that element with Cackle, but it was a little bit more horrific, a little bit more graphic. This wasn't a perfect 5-star only because I did guess something really early on in the book, which I was like really proud of myself for being right, but also I was a little sad because I was like, dang it, I guessed it. But again, I just really like Rachel Harrison's writing. I really like her storytelling, and every book I've read from her has been a 4.5 or higher, so I just really consider her to be one of my favorite authors, and this was just such a pleasant experience. Again, it was just, I just got sucked in. As soon as I started reading it, I was like, ah, I feel comforted. I feel like I'm home, you know, that kind of writing style where you can just kind of like relax into it while you're reading. That's kind of what Rachel Harrison feels like for me. So I was just really happy with this one, and I can't wait to see what Rachel Harrison writes this year in 2023. Well, there you have it, my friends. Those are my favorite books from 2022. It is so weird to me that 2022 is over. It's been a wild year. It's been a crazy year. It's been, I mean, I'm glad it's over, but also it's just insane to think that 2023 is here. I'm literally filming this in 2023 because I waited till the very last minute to film this video. I could not make up my mind about these books, but yeah, it's just wild that 2023 is here, and I'm just so thankful to be making videos and to have such lovely subscribers and just have your support. I'm so thankful, and yeah, I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for you all. So obviously, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, thank you for liking, thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it. So, oh, this is weird. It's just weird that 2022 is over. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. It lets me know that you enjoy content like this. That way I can keep providing you with content like this in the future. If you haven't subscribed already, feel free to do so. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and a Happy New Year. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.